practicing the Spanish language beyond just their coursework. So those are the teachers. They will be, all as planned, the same teachers that your 6th graders will have next year. So I'm going to stop for a minute and see if there's questions about that. So next year the plan is for your students to have the individuals and societies in Spanish, to have the Spanish language arts, and then to have the partner English language arts class each day. Again, the art class will run for 1 semester. They'll either have it first semester or second semester. And then depending on the hiring, we're hoping to get a couple more connections teachers that speak Spanish. And that way we make it to the point where DLI students could select which connections class they would want to take in the Spanish language. So that is the minimum of what they'll have next year. But again, as the program builds out, we're hoping to provide even more. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's my assumption that you have had lots of time to learn about the 3 pillars of the DLI program, as well as the research that shows that students that are in a DLI program, K-12, at levels perform above their non-DLI peers, and that's regardless of whether they're native Spanish speakers or not. The research shows that through this work, they are going to perform above their peers' levels. And so that is something that, as we plan our classes, as our teachers meet, we continue to watch the data. And for us right now, we have received, for the students we have this year, we received, Mr. Vance, help me out with the name of that test they took. But the ones last year. STAMP, yes. So last year, some of our students in Garden Hills and Lee Rivers took what was called the STAMP assessment. Of course, it was a wonky year to say the least, so we didn't have STAMP scores for everybody. But watching those scores and looking at the MAP scores, we are overly confident that our students will continue to meet and exceed that of their like peers. Okay, I feel like I spoke about that slide without it even being shown. Again, you should expect that as your child matriculates through secondary, which is 6-12 DLI, that these are the types of skill sets, both academic and social and emotional, that will be developed as they go through the program. The thing to keep in mind is the initial shift to middle school is a shift. Whether your students are in DLI or not, there is going to be a shift both in the way they go about their day, the way they receive instruction, and the manner in which there will be a roller coaster ride. And that roller coaster ride, well, let me ask you this. How many of you are going to be first-time middle school parents? Oh, no. I should probably ask that first. Okay, it's going to be okay. Everybody's breathing, right? You need some water. The one thing that I can promise you is that the DLI or not, the middle school experience of 2021, post-pandemic, in the middle of a pandemic, is not your middle school experience. And even pre-pandemic, the middle school of today is very different. The buildings might look the same, but the manner in which instruction is delivered, going to different classes, integration of technology, and the way in which we work with students beyond just academic needs is far more expansive. Now, I'm probably older than everybody in the room, but I recall going to middle school and it was, you went to a teacher, they taught you, you moved on, life is great. Middle school, we learned a lot in those years, and I'm not going to tell you how many, but since I've been there, where we really do approach every child from a holistic point of view, so that we're not just working with academic needs, but we're also addressing social, emotional, and other needs as they present themselves. But students today in middle school, now please don't spoil this for them and tell them this, because they think they're going to come to middle school and it's going to be do what you want, go where you want, go crazy, independence. It's not like that. They're scheduling a team of teachers who keep a very close eye on students all day, and they develop relationships with not just within their team, but within the whole school when they go to connections or when they participate in activities. Okay, so this increased global citizenship, this is something that would happen at Sutton anyway, because as students come into our middle years program, we immerse the middle years program standards into every class, including our DLI classes. Students really do leave Sutton Middle School with a full understanding that the world is not like them, that there are different perspectives, there are different ethnicities, there are different cultures, there are different ways in which the citizens of this world live each and every day. And DLI is just such a great partner with IB, and it is our hope that that global perspective that we want our students to have will be just as evident within the DLI classes as not. Okay, again, what I want to show you is a little bit about the differences in the middle school DLI versus elementary. And one of the things that many parents are used to, and I think Brandon runs this way, is that your students pretty much are together all day long. And in middle school, that changes. They will switch classes each period, and though they will be with their DLI peers in the DLI classes, when they go to their other classes, they will have students that are not part of the DLI program within those classes. But what we see in secondary education is we are departmentalized, which means our teachers have certificates in specific content areas because it becomes content heavy starting in 6th grade, as opposed to elementary school where the teachers are more experts as generalists in all of the content areas. So they will go to different teachers who are certified, this is DLA or not, certified in their content area. It is a 50-50, and you'll see that in a minute, but it is considered a 50-50 model in that almost half of their day is delivered in Spanish and then the other half is in English. The difference is that, again, it's not the same students that they're going to be going through their day with. You can also see that the allocation of time, and I've kind of already spoken about that, where they will have the Spanish language arts, English language arts, and social studies in Spanish through the course of their year. Okay, some of the similarities are, of course, that they'll take classes in Spanish and English. There will be some people that they already know. When we bring together 5 programs next year, those students will share a common team of teachers, and there's about 125 students, so that works beautifully to about 25 students per class. The difference is the group that they go to Spanish language arts in may be different than the group that they go to social studies in, but they're all part of a team and they are all in the dual language immersion program. Okay, and so again, this is some scheduling considerations that I want to talk to you about as we schedule your children into their classes for 6th grade. That you can see they will be immersed with students from 5 feeder schools. So we're not scheduling them so that all the Morris Braden students are in the same class, all the Garden Hills kids are in the same class, all the Sarah Smith. We're not doing that. What will happen is they'll come into a classroom and they'll see students from all 5 of those schools. We are so excited about that because one of the things, and that's even for my non-DLI students, what is amazing that happens when students come to 6th grade is, again, they have spent K through 5 essentially, because our transient rate is so low up here in the North Atlantic cluster. They've spent 6 years with the same cohort of students. Trust me, they're ready to make new friends. You'll see that in the spring, if you haven't already seen it already. I mean, of course they love each other and all of that, but when they get an opportunity to meet students from other schools, it's an exciting thing. And we spend a lot of time in the beginning of the year at Sutton getting them acclimated to what we call the Sutton way. We walk them to classes, we show them where things are, we do ice-breaking activities so they learn how to meet new friends. When they go to lunch, they eat with their lunch class so that no one ever has to worry about eating alone or who am I going to speak to at lunchtime. So we really do an incredible job at immersing our students into this school in which they're no longer Morris Brandon students or Sarah Smith students, and that becomes irrelevant after about the first half hour of the first day, believe it or not. Some students won't even talk about what school they came from. And I can't imagine why, Mr. Bland, because if you were my principal for 6 years, I'd be bragging about it to everybody. But it's something about coming up to 6th grade and they want to shed anything that seems elementary about them. So every so often I see a student wear one of their shirts from elementary school and I love it. But at the same time, like I said, they're looking to shed their former selves and really become who they are going to be. Which can, again, be a roller coaster ride for you, because there will be times where we'll be on the call talking and you'll be like, wait a second, that is not my child you're talking about. And I'm like, well, that's your child today, and let's talk about it. And that could be for positive or not so much. But again, you're in for a time period in their lives where that transition is real. And, to make it even more challenging for you as first-time parents, you know that you're, moving your students up to middle school in a time where there is so much social messaging that are coming into their lives and so much to consider as they begin to develop who they are as a person and their identities. And again, even within the DLI program and within Sutton as a whole, we're ready and able to work with them as they go through lots of questions and lots of experiences and lots of things that will be maybe unfamiliar to them and possibly you as well. I encourage you, I encourage you, if you've not already done so, to sign up for a tour. The parents that run the tour in 6th grade are Sutton parents, and they'll be able to tell you all about transitions to middle school and some of the hurdles as well as some of the exciting things that are coming their way. As I mentioned, students will be in about a team of about 125 students, and in non-DLI core classes, it is likely that there will be students that are not in the DLI program. So let's take, for example, science, okay? So for some of your students will receive science in an advanced content model next year, and some of them will receive it on a grade level model. In both of those models, there will be non-DLI students in those classes. And within those classes will be students, again, that have come from all of our schools. And you'll see a sample schedule in just a moment so I can explain that. The other class in which your students will have non-DLI students is our math program. Math takes a huge shift in middle school, and there is an opportunity for students to take the traditional 6th grade math class that we offer or an accelerated math pathway. I just want to let you know that in the accelerated math pathway, entrance into that is determined by district data points, and I do not have them yet. And in a way, I'm kind of glad I don't, because I don't want you to put any pressure on your students for placement in 6th grade math. And that always tends to be something that worries parents. And the thing I want to implant with you today is that once they shift to 6th grade, again, it becomes really content heavy. Math is one of the biggest transitions. And if you put your student in a position for which they are underwater or not ready, they still have 6 more years of math. And 6th grade is not the year to get them stressed about math. If they're not in accelerated in 6th grade, they have an opportunity to get into it in 7th grade. And if they're not in it in 7th grade, there's still an opportunity for them to go into Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So the thing I want to remove from you is any stressor about math placement. Now, I recognize that you still may have that, but until we have the data points and until we have student scores, we just will not really be able to talk much about it yet. But the thing I continue to reassure parents, and I would encourage you to speak to parents whose students have gone through our traditional math pathway, 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math, and those students are in double up math in North Atlanta. I've got a parent right here who knows that. So again, no math experience in middle school is going to prevent your child from reaching calculus in high school, which is ultimately, I think, what most parents want for their children to have. And what I'm saying to you is sometimes for some children, it's better off to go at a traditional pace, let them get those foundational skills, and then in 9th grade, double them up and they'll still have access to the calculus. Only about 25% of our students take accelerated math in 6th grade. Our number of gifted identified students is up around 40%. So you can see that even with the high levels of gifted identified, that still doesn't mean that an accelerated math is the right experience in 6th grade for your child. Again, there are opportunities to go into it in 7th and 8th grade, and I'll get into that either through the Q&A or another time, but I do want to remove that stressor. Yes, question? That is a question that is awesome and I'm unprepared to answer. Mr. Vance, do you have a number on that? Okay, so we do not, though I can tell you with the placement without considering DLI, our numbers of accelerated math students are the same as they have been before we had DLI. So again, the criteria for getting into it is going to be based on not just, I assume, milestones, and again, I'm not sure what the district's going to look at, but I have no reason to believe that the DLI math experience your children have had is going to in any way inhibit their opportunity to go into accelerated in 6th grade. We have not seen that initially, but again, we have a small cohort right now. I would look to get that number for you though. Okay. Absolutely, great question. I should have been prepared for that, and I do apologize for not. As you can see, let's talk about gifted identified students. The thing to understand about gifted identified is that at Sutton, we deliver gifted services through the advanced content delivery model. And what that means is that if your student is already gifted identified, they will receive their segment through the science class, but also what happens in 6th grade is we bring students into our advanced content classes who've never been gifted identified. And that is based on the fact that giftedness does not always align to achievement. We have very, very high achieving students who are not gifted identified, and we have gifted identified students who don't necessarily meet achievement expectations. My own daughter is the perfect example of that. Gifted identified in kindergarten. If you saw her high school transcript, you question that. But again, that's because giftedness and achievement, though they correlate, doesn't mean it's always the same. So we look at children coming up to 6th grade for placement in advanced content, regardless of a gifted identification or not. And that's going to continue through to North Atlanta. Because when your students go up to North Atlanta High School, they will have opportunities to access advanced placement human geography in 9th grade, and then a whole litany of advanced placement courses that have nothing to do with whether your child's gifted identified or not. So that becomes less and less relevant to access to advanced content as they start 6th grade. So access and success in advanced content is based more on the student's personal profile in terms of achievement, in terms of motivation, and in terms of capacity, as opposed to gifted identification or not. And so again, in North Atlanta, it becomes virtually meaningless. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in the way that as students grow older, we recognize that achievement is something that is not necessarily aligned to giftedness. Okay, I'm looking at where I'm at with my fourth. Okay, we talked about they will have at minimum a gifted segment in their science class, in their advanced content class, if they are gifted identified, but we anticipate as many non-gifted identified students in our advanced content science as gifted. And I mentioned that in the next one, and I mentioned the math, so I think I covered this slide. All right, additional scheduling considerations. Every DLI student will have the opportunity to select band, orchestra, or chorus if they would like to. Students receive 2 connections classes a semester. That's what you would call specials in elementary school. So the unique opportunity is in 6th grade, they can opt into band, orchestra, or chorus that runs all year. So if your child picks chorus, for example, they will have chorus all year on A or B day. And then they will have 1 semester of the art in Spanish, and then that last semester it would be computer generated. Students do not select their connections classes in 6th grade except for the band, orchestra, or chorus. Once they get to 7th grade, they can preference into connections classes. By 8th grade, they pretty much get their first or second choices. Not guaranteed, but again, in 6th grade, it is randomly generated. So if your child does not select band, orchestra, or chorus, they will have 1 semester of art in Spanish, and then they will have 3 computer-generated classes. It's generally PE and health for 2 of them, and then from there, it's random. It could be our dance class, it could be our drama, it could be our computer science, digital arts, it could be our broadcast television. There are 12, 13 different, could be guitar. We have so many different connections classes. The reason they don't select in 6th grade is because we want them, part of the IB philosophy is to bring students and expose them to things that they might not normally do. I assure you, dance class is not ballet, and drama class is not Shakespeare, though they talk about it both, but they are really engaging classes. So we don't honor any special requests for connections unless there is a medical need or some other specially identified need for a child. I mentioned this again, if we are able, we are looking to try to, again, as vacancies occur, bring on bilingual teachers. But again, at the same time, we're bringing on the best teachers we can attract. And at Sutton, we're very fortunate that we are considered an attractive school to teach at. So we generally do not have trouble, recruiting high caliber teachers for whom you would be very happy with. I mentioned the connections. So the next slide. This is a sample schedule, and because I've been speaking so long and I need water, and besides, you guys have to hear from Mr. Vance because he is going to be your primary contact with DLI. I'm going to go ahead and let him explain the schedule, and I'm just going to step on the other side and grab my water.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Israel Vance, as Principal Johnson said. As things come up, I will just say questions even after tonight, based on conversations tonight. If you do have particular questions, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to have a conversation with you, have an email conversation with you, however, to address any questions or concerns that you might have. So, talking about our schedule, this is a sample schedule. And this schedule is really based on what a 6th grade schedule this current year looks like. There's not a whole lot of expectation that it would be dramatically different next year, but I do want to just caveat that and say this is based on what a 6th grade schedule would look like. So, for this year, all students have homeroom. This is a kind of a non-attendance class, but it is a place for students to go in the morning to check in with their teachers. One of the things that's important about homeroom is the homeroom teacher will say, everybody remember, it's an A day or it's a B day, because the A day and B day for win period and for first period connections alternates. A day on Monday and Wednesday, B day on Tuesday and Thursday, and then Friday alternates every week. So for a DLI student could possibly have a Spanish reading intervention. This win period is a what I need period, and it is based on the district initiative to provide additional support for the next 3 years. This is the first year, it will continue next year, and then the following year. We are providing intervention in math and in reading, but we also have the ability to provide Spanish reading intervention for students that are in the DLI program who need some additional support with reading. It's also possible that they could be in an enrichment class during that period instead of an intervention section. So there's several options there. But if they are in an intervention Spanish reading class, then that would be reading support in Spanish with a native Spanish speaking teacher. First period connections, as Principal Johnson said, one of those for DLI students will be a visual arts class in Spanish, taught in Spanish. And then it would be random, the other classes, unless you opt your student into chorus, band, or orchestra. So the rest of the day is kind of our academic classes. So the classes that are DLI would be, of course, that visual arts, DLI and connections, Spanish language arts, which is a Spanish language and literature class, and then social studies in Spanish, and then this last period of the day, English language arts. Now, the Spanish language arts teacher and the English language arts, or language and literature teachers, those two teachers work together very similar to the elementary school model of your partner teacher for Spanish and English. They're supporting biliteracy by having conversations about what they're teaching, how they can bridge over into the Spanish from what they're learning in English, how they can bridge over into English from what they're learning in Spanish. So those two teachers work very, very closely. Your students will be getting a double dose of literacy. They'll be getting a literacy block in English and a literacy block in Spanish. And then as you can see, there's options in the schedule, mathematics, science, other connections classes. Those would be with non-DLI peers. And that's the opportunity where students would have possibly accelerated mathematics or on-level mathematics. And then in science, this sample schedule has a gifted science class as well. If a student is gifted identified, then they would receive gifted services in that class. The schedule looks very complicated. I promise you, your students get used to it pretty quickly, and they're never left on their own to figure it out. There are plenty of adults, especially at the 6th grade campus, to guide them and support them, walk them to where they need to be, and be sure that they are familiar with their day. Yeah, question?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up in the States. What is advisement and what is enrichment?
So advisement is the middle school terminology for homeroom. So the course code is advisement, but that's just a homeroom class, and it's just kind of a check-in to the day if the teacher needs to distribute documents or provide information, and that usually happens during that block. And then in the enrichment or the intervention, that is just the support program that APS has put into place this year, and those classes could be a variety of things.
The other thing to consider is periods 2 through 6. This is this particular student's order of DLI and non-DLI classes. Those classes are offered every period, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th. So another DLI student could be in gifted science, DLI Spanish language arts, 2nd period, gifted science, 6th period. Everybody's going to have a unique rotation of those classes. So no two students are going to have that same exact rotation of classes. But among those classes, they'll see the same, basic 125 students. So a question over there, yes.
If your student is not DLI, is it just the Spanish literature or is there place with either Spanish or French?
Correct. Everybody does at Sutton, all students take 5 core classes every day. So all students have the English language arts, the science, the social studies, and the math, and all students have a world language. So if your student isn't in DLI, instead of that DLI Spanish language arts, it would be French or Spanish. Yes?
Can you tell us a little bit about the Spanish language arts? So is that going to be reading Spanish, or they be teaching the language? I feel like sometimes I feel like the kids have this like conjugated verb that's not what we did here, and that was part of the program. But I feel like I was just wondering if there would be actual just a foreign language or particular language covering some of that Spanish language arts, or is it just
No, it is a language arts class. So you're going to see, and because the 2 teachers plan together, they are aligned to standards that are speaking, reading, writing, viewing, and I forget the 5th one. But that is the class where they're going to conjugate verbs in Spanish and in language arts. So what you might see is, for example, they have a text. And the standard for the week might be identifying verbs and supporting verbs or helping verbs. So you would expect lessons in the English version to be using an English text where they're looking at verbs, they're looking at verb tenses, conjugating, looking at supporting grammar. In the Spanish language arts class, they'd be using that same standard, identifying verbs and verb tenses, but with a Spanish language arts text. So that was a great question. If one of the skills is annotation to find the main idea, again, in English that week, they would be annotating a text in English to identify what the main idea was or the author's purpose. That same thing would happen in the Spanish language arts class.
So if I could just add to the Spanish literacy bit, because reading is really important for us at the middle school level to be sure that our students are getting access to material that they can read independently and that they are getting what they need to love reading, and to eventually, our goal through this program is to graduate high school with that seal of biliteracy, right? So in that Spanish language and literature class, they are going to be doing some reading. And a lot of what's going to be happening with phonics and grammar and those types of things is going to be text-based. But students are going to be working on grade level Spanish text, whole group, where the teacher might do a read aloud, and then they analyze text. They do all of this stuff with teacher support and with class support. But then the students might go away and have independent reading that might not yet be on grade level, but it's identified for them based on what their Spanish reading level is. So they will have some independent reading that is based on their level, but then what they're doing in class is going to be on grade level to try to boost them, right, to get them up to that reading level where they need to be. Now, some of our DLI students are reading perfectly on a 6th grade Spanish level. Not quite everybody's there, right? But so one reason we chose this program with district support was because it gave us the flexibility to work on grade level text, but also to give students text that they could read independently that would support their learning and not be so tough that they would have to struggle with it, so that they could really enjoy the reading independently.
And that same thing applies to the English language arts. So the district has a program for middle schools that is called Amplify, and that is the foundational program to deliver the standards in English language arts. So that same differentiation that Mr. Vance mentioned for the Spanish is also what's happening in the English class. So that teacher will deliver standards and content to your students, but when they're doing independent work, the text that they're working from or what their assignment is could be as leveled as it would be in the Spanish class. So just like in the Spanish language arts class in 6th grade, we anticipate, especially based on this year, reading levels in Spanish anywhere from just below grade level to college level. And so that teacher differentiates the experience and the exposure students get through independent work and through group work because she has these language level skills. Well, that same thing happens in the English language class. We have students who read anywhere from just below grade level all the way through college level in English. And your child's reading level may be different in one language than it is in the other. And those two teachers they have a second planning period every day to specifically go through the data and plan for that variety of reading, writing, and randomly for their teams and for their classes. However, with having 5 different feeder elementary programs in, we will be randomly generating the order of classes and the classmates, but then we are going to go back through it to make sure that each class has students from all 5 elementary schools, as well as even as possible, the same number of native Spanish speakers as it does native English speakers. So your child is not going to be in a DLI Spanish language arts class with only native English speakers. It will be approximately 50-50 in heritage language, and then it will be about 20% from each of the elementary schools. We will deliberately be doing that to assure that your students have as a diverse class experience as possible, because it is through that manner in which their language in both languages is going to have the maximum potential. So that was a great question. Follow-up, yes?
And that's a big difference from the way it is today, because we really have a one-way model here at Morris Brandon, which is different, I think, than all the other schools in our cluster. So it'll be awesome for our kids to have more native Spanish speakers to learn from.
Yes, and so thank you for bringing that up, Fran. The statement was, and I'll get right back to your follow-up question, was that Morris Brandon is unique in our DLI programs in that you are the only school with a one-way model, which means for the most part you do not have native Spanish speakers in your DLI program. Well, the wonderful thing is your students are going to be exposed to native Spanish speakers from a variety of Spanish-speaking countries. So they're going to get an opportunity, not just through their teachers, but from their peers, to engage in Spanish language with different countries, different accents, different lingo, different idioms. And so, because how they say the word straw in Spanish in Puerto Rico is completely different than the word in Mexico, and completely different from the word in Spain. So that is going to be something that your students will experience. I anticipate there may be some initial learning that they'll get from that, but I am super excited about it and can only hope that you are as well. Because remember, the more native Spanish speakers that they have an opportunity to interact with through their DLI program, it's just only going to grow and enhance them. Thank you, Fran, for mentioning that. You had a follow-up question.
Yeah, it was not clear to me that on the connections classes, they get to pick 2 each semester, it looks like? And is it their choice, or does that get assigned, or like what other choice?
Yes.
I know there was one where there was 3 things, like band and a couple other things.
So what?
Okay, wait, you came back on, yay. So the question was about connections classes, and again, this is something that will be very confusing to parents for
quite a while, and we're here to help unpack that for you. But regarding Spanish,
I'm trying to be on mic, okay. Regarding connections classes, they are randomly assigned, except for the DLI visual arts you see, that could go in any of those 4 spaces, which is A or B day on term 1 or A or B day on term 2. That is randomly assigned. Any other connections classes, if they do not select band, orchestra, or chorus, are randomly assigned, and we have about 13 or 14 different classes. I would encourage you to go to our website, and there is a drop-down menu called Rising 6th Graders, and that would give you the variety of connections classes. But the only ones that students can choose in 6th grade are band, orchestra, and chorus. DLI students automatically have the DLI visual arts. They cannot opt in or out of it. It's part of our
Great. I'm interested in what Mr. Vance said about that special certification on the diploma. Because for me, I've got a 9th grader at North Atlanta, and I still have competitive, it is the AP classes, the different tracks, and, kids really want to set themselves apart. So that for me is a really exciting part of this program, that our kids can go all the way through 12th grade and graduate with that. Can you talk a little more about it? I know we're not there yet, that APS doesn't have anybody, but how much of a differentiator is it? Do we know, are there, a lot of schools in the state that will offer that? I mean, how special could this be for this group?
repeat the question for the video.
So the question was about the seal of biliteracy for on the high school diploma, and how unique is that? It's an opportunity for students to kind of differentiate themselves, right? What I will say is the seal of biliteracy was approved just a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. It includes a variety of languages, not just Spanish. Of course, our DLI students will be getting the seal of biliteracy for Spanish specifically. We have not really gotten to the point where we've seen students graduate in APS with that seal yet, and there's still a couple questions about testing and what that's going to look like at the high school level. But the expectation for that seal on the diploma is that the student is graduating high school with a proficiency in both languages to the level at which a person graduating from the equivalent of high school in another Spanish-speaking country, right? So their proficiency level is equivalent to that level of education in a native Spanish-speaking country. And that is a huge benefit for students going into college, having an opportunity to study in different places, right? I mean, it puts them head and shoulders above students that have, study abroad experiences, but they're learning the language while they're studying abroad. They're going to be able to, do study abroad experiences in college or career or whatever, and be able to really already have that language, right? So that seal of biliteracy is a huge game changer for what they're going to be able to do after high school.
The other thing we anticipate is that our students will be able to apply to and get accepted into universities in foreign countries that speak Spanish. So the seal of biliteracy will allow your students to apply to colleges in Mexico or Spain or Costa Rica or another Spanish-speaking country. And you can imagine that that would be a very desirable trait for those universities to accept American students, and I can foresee scholarships and lots of opportunities. Very few students go to college overseas, and it's a missed area of a free education. Students that are able to get into universities overseas, especially in a second language, generally don't have to pay for much. So it would be our hope, and if you're not already aware, Mr. Douglas, the principal at North Atlanta High School, is already planning with us. We started 3 years out working with the elementary principals, and he's working with us as well, of course with Dr. McKenzie's office, to assure that not only our students are qualified for a biliteracy seal, but that we're opening your eyes and their eyes to the possibility of doing undergraduate degrees overseas. Yes?
Sorry, Matt. I don't know if this doesn't really have anything to do with that, but my question is, do we foresee any chance of having opportunity to do any overseas travel as a group, like they used to do? And only reason I say that is my husband did go to Sutton, France, but that was a bajillion years ago. But I didn't know if the DLI program would have maybe some opportunities to do something like that as a group.
So the question was the chance for overseas travel for our students, and at the risk of getting my hand slapped by Dr. McKenzie, I will say to you, no, it's fine, I joke about that. Margaret, if you see this, you know we're good. So let me say this, we are already planning for that. We are working with a nonprofit organization that specializes in overseas experiences for DLI students, and this particular nonprofit is fabulous because they allow for students to do homestays overseas, and they are willing to work with us in a way that we can make these trips accessible to every student, regardless of economic backgrounds. So we do anticipate a trip at the end of 8th grade for our students. We anticipate an option for either an overseas or to Puerto Rico, because not all of our students are able to go overseas. So, and again, so I will say this to you, and I'll have to say to all the elementaries we visit now, we are already starting a partnership to make that happen. So, and I think there was even talk about possibly a 5th grade trip, but yeah, Mr. Bland's sort of shaking his head there. We're trying to be a little low-key about it because, of course, as you all know, we are in a time where we just don't know what next week's going to look like. But I do want you to know that we are looking at those possibilities.
Thank you.
For that bilingual seal, do you have to have gone through DLI to be eligible for it, or is the thought that DLI students will just be better prepared?
That's a good question, and I have to admit I'm not exactly sure about that. I know that there is a level of course requirement that's required. You have to have a certain level of language instruction, and then you do have to do a proficiency test. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like for non-DLI students. I do know that DLI students are well placed to be able to achieve that, and my understanding is it's even possible for students to do that test before their senior year so that they'll already have, know whether or not they'll be able to achieve that.
And I can confirm that biliteracy seals are available to non-DLI students because they're available in different languages as well. But as Mr. Van said, there is a requirement for a level of coursework before you can even take the exam. So again, it's something that DLI students will already be on. But if you think about a non-DLI student, say entering 9th grade with a level 1 or level 2, it's very hard to get that level of coursework in. But for example, let's say at North Atlanta there was a native Korean speaker, and they were able to get, because they offer Korean at North Atlanta, I think some of it's virtual, but if they were able to get that level of coursework in and then be successful on the exams, they would be able to get it. But with our students, the plan is so that the coursework has already been planned out as they go through North Atlanta, so the ability to access the test is right there. Great question. Yes, sir.
On the scheduling side, for the science and math, are those teachers part of the team? Will all of the Get to DLI students effectively have the same science teacher, or is it more like the connections where everybody kind of goes to?
Yeah, so they're not on the DLI team, but we try to send them to the same teacher. So they would go we don't have a science teacher on the DLI team per se, but for any of the students that are taking advanced science, we tend to send them to that same science teacher that would have non-DLI students. Same thing with math. So we tend to send them all, because all of our math teachers teach both traditional and accelerated math. We'll generally look and we'll select which teacher would receive those students, and it would be the same teacher. Same thing with science. It's going to be the same teacher for whether they're in the advanced content or traditional grade level. And again, that's to make it easier for that communication among teachers as well as for you as parents. That's not, however, 100%, because there are students that have specific course requirements that might need specific supports, and so they may go to a different teacher. But that is the plan in the scheduling. Yes?
With all these different teachers, how's the communication with the parent? Is there a primary teacher, or how do we know how they're doing?
So the question was communication with all of the different teachers. So yes, you will be communicating with up to 9 different teachers each semester, and it is separate. It's not like having your home-based teacher. We have made communication between teachers and parents super easy at Sutton. Every teacher has a Google Classroom. Every teacher has an email, and the communication between you and the teachers is directly to the teacher. Now, if there is a bigger concern where your student is having obstacles in multiple classes because they share a team and they all have planning periods, our counselor would then facilitate any needed communication that went beyond one or two teachers. Yes, and I'll get to you guys.
Thank you. My question is a follow-up to this gentleman's question. He was asking about the math and the science teachers. If your child is not in an accelerated course, so just, I guess the regular math and science, do they tend to be sent to the same teachers? So they will have classmates that are still in DLI with them?
Yeah, DLI, we all have some classmates there and some not. The thing to understand with middle school is that all of the teachers in 6th grade, for the most part, are gifted certified. All my science teachers are. So that teacher teaches 5 classes a day. Some of them are advanced content, some of them are not. So regardless of whether your student's receiving instruction in science from the advanced content model or not, that teacher's still gifted certified. And most of the teachers in 6th grade are gifted endorsed. So that raises, they don't necessarily turn it off and on. What it does is make them great practitioners with differentiation. Because we know even in a gifted or advanced content model, differentiation is needed. And the gifted endorsement that most of our teachers have in 6th grade, again, it allows for them to be very effective at using data to inform instruction and to differentiate based on student needs. So yes, they would technically, for the most part, like I said, there's always that exception, would go to the same science teacher. Yes?
This is just a middle school question in general. What's your average class size?
24 to 26. 24 to 26. Before I take the next question, Mr. Bland, do you want to go to the next slide? I knew there were going to be a lot of questions on that, and don't forget your questions. But this is just another way of looking at the 6th to 8th grade articulation. And you can see that again, all 6th graders, all 7th graders, all 8th graders take the same sequence of classes. It's just a difference between what is taught in Spanish and what is taught in English. Let's see, someone feel free to take a picture of that. It is complicated to understand. It looks more complicated than it actually is. But basically what I want you to see that in 6th grade, your students are going to cover earth science and they're going to cover Europe, Americas, Australia in individuals and societies, even though your students will get it in the Spanish language. It's still going to cover the same access. And then I want to take you one more slide so you can see what that looks like in North Atlanta. So again, if you look at the 9th through 10th grade articulation of students, DLI or not, you can see how automatically they will have access to both grade level, honors, and advanced content material. I'll give you a second to digest that in case you have questions. But you can see in each in each pathway, there are levels of that class. Now, what's yet to be determined are which contents will be delivered in Spanish, but as I mentioned Tuesday night at the virtual town hall, I have a friend, and he teaches advanced placement human geography in Spanish at a high school in Cobb County. So it is very possible that your student may select advanced placement. I don't think all the contents are up there, but they may select advanced placement statistics in 11th grade, depending on what their hiring is or how that's delivered. That could possibly be delivered in the Spanish language. But all levels of all courses will be available to all of your students when they get to 9th grade. They will have had the foundational courses to be able to opt into those. And let me see if there's one more slide, I think. Okay, that's basically what to look for next. And I'll get to these questions again. I cannot stress to you, first of all, I heard some of you weren't on Twitter. If you're not following me at Sutton Principal on Twitter, you're missing out. On our website, you can also subscribe to the Sutton Source at any time. It's never too soon. And that will come into your inbox every Sunday. There's also a DLI tab, and we have about every quarter a DLI newsletter. The first one is already up there on the website, and the next one's getting ready to come out. The newsletter is going to cover the DLI program. It's going to give you updates on our IB program, as well as give you information about what is happening in our WIN block, our What I Need block. So that newsletter does come out quarterly, but our website is really the basis for information for Sutton Middle School. And I think at this point I can take some additional questions. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Can you just talk a little bit more about the transition from elementary school to middle school? Obviously, Brandon's like a little happy bubble, and you'll see that not all of us, Fran and Sarah, they have a couple of older kids, but most of us are first-time middle school parents. And I know life will change. So if you could just talk a little bit about that in general, that would be great.
Sure. So the question was to talk a little bit about the transition from elementary to middle school, and I will tell you now, it's super easy for your children. You are the ones that have trouble with it. You are the ones that have the questions. You are the ones that have the concerns, and that's more than understandable. I'm blessed to be a parent myself, and even as a principal, when my daughter transitioned to middle school and to high school, I went through those anxiety attacks. I sat there like you did. If you think this is something, wait till you go to Rising 9th grade parent night. No offense, Mr. Douglas, but it becomes overwhelming. And what I want to assure you is that we have a model of integrating our students into middle school, and we are so fortunate to have our 6th grade campus, because what it does is it allows our 6th graders to develop into their middle school selves without the social pressures of 7th and 8th graders around them. Because I'll tell you, there is a world of difference between an 8th grader and a 6th grader. And unfortunately, you'll get some of that difference in the bus transportation, but we're not talking about buses tonight. But really, that is the only time that they're interacting with older students. So when we bring our students into Sutton Middle School, we don't just give them a schedule and say, go about your day. Like I said, we have a full integration program where students' hands are figuratively held, and they are walked through every part of and every aspect of middle school. On top of that, we are hoping to offer this summer. We were unable to last summer. I'm not sure about this summer. We had in the past offered something called the Cougar Premiere, and if we do offer it, I would encourage you to participate. But it basically is a few days for a half a day where your students can come into 6th grade with some of our teachers, and they learn things like lockers, which we're not using right now anyway, transitions, where everything is. We do anticipate in the spring, though, we will do what we traditionally done before the pandemic, which is called We Are Sutton. And that is an evening where you and your child will be able to come by Sutton and just walk around the school and meet our teachers. Before the first day of school, we will do our celebration of learning, and that's when you'll get to meet the individual teachers your child's been assigned to. You won't know that till about a week before school starts. You'll know pretty much who your teachers are because of the DLI.
Excuse me for a second.
Vance, do you want to talk about some of the other things that we do to acclimate our students?
Yeah, so I will just say that the 6th grade campus really is kind of a blessing for 6th graders, because there are teachers in the hallway with every transition. The connections teachers are walking them up and down the steps to their connections classes. You know, in the lunch period, teachers are, especially for the first couple of weeks, sitting with those students, getting to know them, doing, activities at lunch and that kind of thing. There is lots and lots of support, not only for students, but also for parents, right? Being able to reach out, we're very lucky that we have 2 administrators per grade level, so that it allows you to have a little bit more of a direct contact with people when you do have particular concerns that you need to address. There really is lots and lots of support. As students are transitioning from A day to B day, trying to figure out that sequence, all of that. We really do our best to ensure that students are completely aware of where they're going, what they're doing throughout the day.
Can I jump in as a parent and just add to that, as an older, more seasoned parent? Maybe stuff that Ms. Johnson and Mr. Vance can't say, but I can share my experience is that they don't have any problem figuring their way around on parents' night when I've got the schedule and I'm like turned around and I'm like, how do you know where you are? I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom, so easy. So that I feel like is fun for them. They figure it out. One thing that I think is a big difference, and it kind of gets to Camille's question about which teacher is emailing me what they're doing this week. It's like the kids really become more independent, and they should. So they're the ones that are keeping up with things. Teachers are not necessarily sending you, this is what they're learning this week. Your kids are keeping up with it, and Sutton does a great job of helping train them to become their own advocate. The teachers say, if you have a missing work, I want you to let me know. Your parents are also welcome to send me an email, but come talk to me. So it kind of teaches them to take responsibility for themselves, and that doesn't happen from day one, but I think that's a huge transition from middle school. And what I've heard other parents say is like, you don't want to, when they're missing, they left their homework or they left their lunch, you don't want to bring it to them in 6th grade. Let them experience the loss of that homework or lunch in 6th grade. So by the time they're in high school and it matters, right, that they're on top of it. So that is a huge difference from elementary, where, you can drop things off with Mrs. Plummer and she's going to get it to them and everybody knows their name. It's a transition that should happen, and Sutton's a safe place for it to happen.
I call it let them learn while the stakes are low. Because let's say they forget their band instrument. Okay, traditionally you would want to come up and bring it. We don't want you to. We want that child to have to do the alternative assignment for the class and understand and internalize, I forgot my instrument, this is what happens. Homework counts for less than 10% of their grade. If they left their homework at home, let them get the 0 or let them turn it in late. I don't think we even give zeros, and we don't take off points for late for the most part, but let them learn this now while the stakes are low. If they forget their lunch, let them eat the cafeteria food. Now, if they have a food allergy, of course, we'll work with you. But we all but prohibit parents from bringing things to the school except for medicine or medical needs, or if it was something that was determined an emergency. But you couldn't have said it better, Fran. That's part of the middle school experience, is feeling that discomfort. I forgot my homework. I left my laptop at home. We have laptops for them. But things like homework, the stakes are so low at middle school. We want them to experience the accountability of their actions while they're low, so that when they get to high school, it becomes a habit. Oftentimes, I know as parents, we want to save our child from that negative experience. Of course, we don't want negative experiences for our students. There are some experiences we never want them to have. But you know what? We forget things in life. And if they don't understand that by the time they get to high school, it tends to hit them so much harder, and it becomes harder on you as well. So we really have built in a system of teaching them the accountability and the self-advocacy. Anytime they need to go home, they can go to the counselor.
You can see what assignments are missing. There are lots of resources, even though the teacher might not be communicating all that minutia to you directly, you will have access to any of those things.
And there's certainly been times I've reached out directly to teachers, and they're always very responsive. So you certainly have that, but it just is not as regular as it is in elementary.
That is true, yeah. The outward communication, the response is consistent. Our teachers have to respond or acknowledge an email within 48 hours. Non-teachers, Mr. Vance, myself, my APs, my counselors, acknowledge within 24 hours. Sometimes it's much faster than that, but it's always, we have a level of expectation with communication, but it's not going to be as forward-facing or as much coming directly from us, but we will be responsive. And again, the Google Classroom is going to be your friend. I think we got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Yes?
So does each teacher have 125 students?
Yes, they do. They teach 5 classes a day and teach about 125 different students. As crazy as I know that sounds to you, that is a typical middle and high school model. So, and our teachers, they choose to teach in secondary because of that. You know, as lovely as it is in elementary school to have this wonderful group of 25 kids with you all day, every year, not every teacher likes that. And so you do really get a differentiation between who becomes secondary oriented. I won't even talk about the year I taught 5th grade, because out of 18 years of teaching, it was 1 year and I realized I'm a secondary educator. I can just know that. So yes, they are well used to it. They will know every child's name within a day. They will know your child's personalities, your uniqueness about them. They'll know you as needed. So that is, children don't get lost at Sutton. I know there's always, you know, a school so big, this fear that your child's just going to be, you know, kind of on their own, but that is not the staff that we have at Sutton. Our 6th grade staff and all of our staff for that matter are selected because not just of how effective they are as a teacher, but they have to have a mindset for middle school students. They have to be willing to deal with the impulsiveness of students. They have to be willing to deal with those instantaneous mood swings. They have to be able to deal with a lot of things. So we do a lot of inquiry before we select teachers for middle school, and I will just tell you they are the angels of education. No offense to any other level, but middle school is one of those years that it's a ride, and you know, if you don't get joy out of it, I tell teachers, if these kids don't make you laugh and give you joy, then middle school might not be the place for you, but I assure you, your children are coming to an incredibly caring environment with their teachers. So I think we have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up.
I was going to ask about the DLI platform, sort of transitioning from the math and science model. That was explained to us originally because it's very concrete, it's easier to understand. Are you seeing any problems with the kids, the language comprehensiveness to talk about these more esoteric things this year? And do we feel like if we're Brandon was one way, we're going to have that ability, or are they going to have the last in English?
We've not seen, I have not seen any particular issues with that this year. Now, bear in mind, our cohort this year is pretty small. Our teachers, you know, are really, really focused on getting these students where they need to be and providing that additional support, and they will be for your students as well next year. But having the opportunity to, you know, math becomes a lot more abstract in 6th and 7th grade. So doing that in English is a little bit better, you know, but learning to count and to do those things in Spanish is incredibly important, you know, so the way that we've chosen the languages, hopefully it will be a natural progression. Going into social studies, right, doing social studies in Spanish, again, it might feel like a huge jump, but they're learning about culture and these types of things. Doing art in Spanish, you know, when you go to a museum in Spain or in Colombia, they're going to be able to read all the plaques on the wall, you know? So we're trying to be sure that the classes that we're giving them are going to be classes that are going to be really beneficial for them and allow them that ramp, right? There will be a little bit of a transition between 5th grade, between doing those concrete subjects and then moving into something that's a little more social, a little more different, you know? But I think we've been very intentional about the choices that we've chosen for instruction, and we'll see exactly how that works. I mean, we're 10 weeks in to our first year of DLI, right? So I thank you all very much for your patience, because we're going to probably make some mistakes, and we're doing the best we can. We've got fantastic support from the district. You know, I've talked to other people in other districts, and they're doing a great job, but I have to say, I'm really proud of the program that we've developed, and I'm really excited to have your students there, and we will give them every bit of support that we can.
And just to reinforce that, I have not seen any obstacles that relate to students being in DLI. Any hiccups are just the transition from 5th to 6th grade. We are, of course, dealing with students, some who have not been in school building for a year and a half, whether it's DLI or not. But as Mr. Van said, it is a novice program, and so we will be learning as we go along. And in some ways, this year's students really are, you know, susceptible to the advent of the program and things that we may look back at and say we should have done differently or could have done differently, but not to an extent that's going to compromise their ability to achieve and succeed succeed in life. They're maintaining themselves. And I'll leave you with this little bragging notation. One of our DLI students was just announced today in an international press release with the American Middle Level Education Association, huge organization. One of our DLI students is one of 4 international finalists. And this was a contest about student voice, and they were asked to present via video their opinion on a particular subject. And again, this was international, so across the entire world, they had thousands of entries. And there is a Sutton student today that was named one of 4 finalists, and he will compete in the finals on November 2nd, I believe. So it would not surprise me if he did not win. And he is a DLI student from kindergarten up. So if that is a testament, and he's a native English speaker, not that that should matter, but if that is a testament to the success of how we're building our students and how they're doing along the way, I don't know what else is, but we're super proud of that and look forward to pushing that out even further. With that, I want to thank you. Jay's giving me some signals, so I'm going to let him come up and close us out. And just to remind you, we are an email away. And it was an absolute pleasure to be here tonight.
All right, give it up for Gail.
Give it up for Mr. Vance. Obviously, that is your person right there.
All right, thanks so much. You guys are free to go. It's great to be in a meeting where I'm just the AV guy and I don't have to lead anything, so thank you for that. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. I can put you in contact with them. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.
We're going to get him up in the morning. Don't worry about it.
Kids have to come in here in the morning?
That's 7:45.
Good, how are you? That's why we're in a bit of a rush.
Let me turn this off real quickly.
Hi.
It's not illegal.
She told me it is.
I told him